Hello everyone, and welcome to Managing Human Capital More Efficiently at Ochsner Health System, presented by Workday. I'm Paige Minnemeyer, Associate Editor with Fierce Healthcare, and I'll be moderating this webinar. Our speakers today are Adam Kaufman, Strategic Healthcare Industry Advisor at Workday, and Tracy Skiro, Vice President, HR Operations and HRIS at Ochsner Health System. You can read their full bios on the left side of your window. Just a few technical notes before we begin. If you'd like to download the slide deck, please click the Files button at the lower left of your screen. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand within 24 hours after the event. We will follow the presentation with a Q&A session. Please submit your questions during or after the presentations by clicking the Q&A button in the lower left corner of the screen. Okay, now let's begin. Adam, if you would, please.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar, Managing Human Capital Management More Efficiently, a Fierce Healthcare webinar with Ochsner Health System. My name is Adam Kaufman, and I am the Strategic Healthcare Industry Advisor at Workday, and I'll be moderating today's event. For those of you who are new to Workday, we are the cloud leader for financial, supply chain, and human resources. Healthcare is a strategic priority for Workday. We recognize that healthcare providers are facing an onslaught of change driven by healthcare reform, industry consolidation, new business models to deliver care, and a battle for talent. Workday's platform solution is delivered in the cloud on a single code line and helps healthcare institutions face and address the challenges of today and tomorrow. Workday is fortunate to have welcomed many healthcare providers across the continuum of care to our customer base, including large IDNs, academic medical centers and research institutions, regional community and teaching hospitals, long-term care facilities, urgent care clinics, home care, hospice, and healthcare staffing institutions. We are very excited to discuss the experiences of one of our wonderful customers, Ochsner Health System. With me today is Tracy Skiro, Vice President of HR Operations and HRIS for Ochsner Health System. As VP of HR Operations and HRIS for Ochsner Health System, Tracy is leading the implementation of Workday HCM and payroll. She has served as the VP of HR Operations and HRIS, VP of HR Employee Services, and AVP of Benefits, Compensation, and HRIS the past 9 years, focusing her time on creating scalable processes and systems. During today's webinar, Tracy will discuss the benefits of moving to Workday and some of the challenges of Ochsner Health System faced prior to making the switch. And with that, I will hand it over to Tracy.
Thank you, Adam. I'm excited to be here today to share Ochsner's journey with Workday. So a little bit about Ochsner. We're the only Louisiana hospital recognized by U.S. News & World Report as a best hospital in 6 different specialty categories. Ochsner conducts over 900 clinical research studies annually. We employ over 17,000 employees, and we provide a tobacco-free environment for our employees and our patients. So in the 9 years that I've been with Ochsner, we have managed in our back office operations an environment of rapid growth with limited system capabilities for HR. Many of our processes were paper-based that had been automated through email workflows and scanning systems without a central environment for all of our HR processes and procedures. As we were going through the rapid growth, our back office teams, including HR, finance, and supply chain, came together and realized that we were all experiencing very similar issues in how we were able to scale for the growth at Ochsner. So we came together and we decided that we needed to do an assessment of our ERP system, Lawson, and to determine what our opportunities might be to continue with Lawson or to make a change that would provide us opportunities for scalability and to match up with the organization's strategic vision for growth. So as part of the assessment, we identified many opportunities in all of the areas, HR, finance, and supply chain, and we made the decision to do an RFP to look at different vendors to see what was in the market. We had been with Lawson for almost 20 years and really hadn't gone out to see what was out there for our organization. So as part of that process, we decided to embark on an 18-month ERP project implementing Workday for HCM and payroll, upgrading Cronus to version 8, and upgrading our ERP for finance and supply chain. As part of this, we envisioned as a team a future state that had standardized processes, leveraging automation, better end user experiences, data integrity, improved metrics for decision making, and mobile capabilities. With the investment that was being made by our executive leadership team, we knew that as a team for the back office that we needed to put goals in place to deliver a more productive and efficient way of managing HR, finance, and supply chain. We knew that we would have to be able to respond quickly to growth, that our systems needed to align to Ochsner's strategic vision. We needed to provide different end-user platforms, such as mobile, and dashboard reporting and improved data analytics was key to our ability to enable our leaders to make better business decisions. So what are some of the benefits with Workday, and why did we make the decision to move to Workday? So when you get into the system and you see that it's one single platform for everything HR in terms of how you access an employee's record and how you can move into performance or compensation right from one screen in the system, we knew that we really liked what that look and feel would be for our end users. And there were some functionality and features that just we knew our organization would adopt to and would make such an enhancement for our end users, such as the organization charts. They provide a new lens to our organization and how to look at their employees, and they provide leaders with real-time data about their staff. We were very interested in the integrated talent processes. Many of our talent processes were paper-based, Excel forms, PowerPoint presentations that were scanned into an email automation system, and we knew that we needed to move away from that and have one integrated platform for talent. We wanted to use the talent processes to drive decisions from succession planning, recruitment, and having a gauge on what our future workforce plans would look like. We needed improvement in benefits operations for the back office team in terms of how we managed benefits and the connections with payroll, and we also needed a better user experience for enrollment. Pay stubs were available, in terms of for our employees through a third-party integration with the ERP, and now with Workday, it's available on the mobile device, on their PC, however they choose to access it, providing employees with the opportunity to view things that maybe were more burdensome to be able to do that in prior systems. And then leaders have an inbox to manage transactions so that they can look at information that's coming through from their leaders and make good decisions on approvals in terms of pay impacting transactions as well as petition movement. So we began our journey about 18 months ago, and we started our implementation in August of 2015 with our implementation partner, Deloitte. And we went live on July 1st, 2016 for 17,000 employees. We processed our first payroll for July 1st distribution. We used ADP for our tax filing, and that was new for us in terms of using a different way of doing tax filing, but it actually has provided more automation and less manual interaction for our payroll team. And we went live on core HCM, benefits, employee self-service, manager self-service, absence, compensation, payroll, and talent performance with final versions of that being going live in the fall of 2016. And we had 78 integrations between Workday and other systems and outsourced processes. So we did an 11-month deployment with Deloitte. So some of these numbers are staggering that I'm about to share with you in terms of you think about the work and what happened over the 18-month period. We had 124 Workday design workshops where we brought in leaders throughout the organization, HR teams, other functional users to talk about what would be the best process for each type of transaction or how we wanted things to look in the system. So we embarked on that with Deloitte leading the Workday design sessions, and that took probably about 4 to 6 weeks to run through the workshops and have the blueprint for how we wanted to move forward with Workday. We had 78 system integrations, some managed by our partner and others managed by our own internal IT team. We had 12 testing cycles with over 2,800 test cases. We had 6,000 Workday configuration elements, 59 Workday design configuration deliverables, 70-plus project management and leadership meetings, which I'll talk a little bit more in words of wisdom towards the end of the presentation, and 28 instructor-led training sessions, and the majority of our training was led as self-paced training on our LMS with over 30,000 training sessions delivered. So with any type of change of this size in terms of impacting everything our employees were doing in terms of managing their own employee data and managing employee data for their teams, we had to have a good change management process. And I will tell you that my role quickly shifted from looking at the project from a very technical and process-oriented view to being more concerned about how we were going to have our employees and leaders adopt the change. We put in place a change leader network with over 100 employees from different functions throughout the system. And we asked them to help us with things like passing on important information in staff meetings, being a point person during Go Live week, answering questions and sending us feedback that they may be hearing within their departments or within their facilities, and providing local support throughout the training and the Go Live experience. This worked really well for us. We, in a future slide, I'm going to share our adoption with you, but really it's been a quiet implementation, I can say, and that there has been minimal contact with our employee call center in terms of inquiries or issues with the system, and I really contribute that to our change management and training processes and how we delivered that throughout the system. So you can see here that from July 1st to July 22nd, we had 17,602 total users, and 75% of them have logged in. Majority of them are logging in on the desktop, and we see a steady amount of them also going in on the phone and the tablet. So we're really excited about this, and I can tell you that out of this many employees logging into the system, we had less than 500 calls to our employee call center about how to use the system or questions about how to handle a process or a transaction. So we're really excited about those outcomes. So some things that we learned along the way, and really, that we put in place that I think really drove the success of our implementation was dedicated project resources. When we were in the assessment phase and deciding to do this project, I was adamant about the need to have a dedicated team so that this did not become a night job for other HRIS employees. So we dedicated a team of 6 HCM, HRIS resources to work on the project day in, day out. Now, we did bring in other subject matter experts and leaders to vet through processes and help during testing phases, but there were 6 people who were dedicated to this work at all times over the 12-month period. We had a disciplined project management and governance that included an executive steering committee that was made up of our CAO, our CHRO, our CFO, and our CIO. We met monthly with the committee, giving them updates on the project, the budget, how things were moving, and then also bringing key decisions that needed to be discussed at a higher level in the organization. I would say that it's really important to identify cross-functional dependencies early on, getting in with the finance team, IT, understanding where the impacts are. Sometimes we think that we know all of the places that our new HR system is going to touch, and there are lots of different areas that when you change employee data that there's impact to, and I think getting those cross-functional areas identified early on in the project will definitely help with integrations and reporting. And then we had a project roadmap that reflected ongoing project impacts to Workday. So we would do what we called walk-the-wall sessions with Deloitte from time to time to lay out all of the initiatives that were Workday impacting that were going on throughout the system to make sure that we didn't have resources that were going to cross different areas of implementations that could be going on in IT or in finance, and we laid out those roadmaps. And then we've also have started to look at phase 2 for the rest of the work that has to happen throughout the remainder of 2016. And I will tell you that, we cannot underestimate the need on the change management and the training initiatives and the ability to manage the logistics around the change management and training and coordinating that for over 17,000 employees. So as you begin to build plans to look at a system implementation of this size at your own organizations, that's something that you want to plan for up front and make sure that you have dedicated resources. So that's all I have for today in terms of presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Adam for Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. So if anybody has any questions, please enter them in the Q&A box that is on your screen. All right. We do have a question here. Question is, why did you decide to do this project now?
Okay. Well, we hit a point, like I said, about 18 months ago where our processes and our systems just were not scalable. Managing things on paper forms and spreadsheets that really could not be consistent or standardized throughout the system, that every time we added a hospital partnership, it was driving us to add additional staff or to go out and train on things that just were not scalable or consistent. So we decided that it was in our best interest to make a shift now to a new way of handling HR with Workday and on the payroll side as well. So we felt like the timing was right. We had been through a lot of growth. When I joined over 9 years ago, we were at about 7,000 employees, and we had grown to 17,000 over that time, and it was much needed.
So, Tracy, kind of building on that, we often hear from our other prospects and customers that oftentimes there's a desire to address things like this, but it gets deprioritized among all the competing other IT projects and clinical systems and things of that nature. Was there anything that helped kind of get the approval to move forward and make the investment at Ochsner this time around?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. One is we had just come off of the Epic implementation, so a lot of the focus for IT and capital funding had been on Epic in the organization, and our leadership knew that we had not spent enough time or focus on our back office operations. And so the time was right in terms of the ability to focus our attention to the other areas of the business from an IT perspective that needed to be addressed. And I also think that we came together as a team. So it wasn't just an HR project, it was a true transformation project impacting all of the back office operations, made a difference in our approach and the ability for our executive leadership to invest in it.
Excellent. Okay, and in terms of your selection, how was that run, and how long did that actual selection process take?
Sure. So we did an assessment that took about 8 weeks. And then from the assessment, we came up with all of our requirements in terms of what we would want to look for in a new vendor. And we used that information to create the RFP to look at other HCM and payroll systems. And we conducted the RFP. We invited the vendors in for demonstrations. We took deeper dives on the functionality by giving scripted demos so that we could actually take some things that were of importance to us here at Ochsner and ask the vendors to demonstrate those in the system. So it wasn't just a canned demo. It was more specific to the needs here at Ochsner. And we also did a lot of reference checks with other healthcare systems that were using the vendors that we were considering at the time.
Excellent. Thank you. And we have some more questions coming in right now. Just a moment. Oh, and in terms of selecting Workday, what was it about Workday that separated it from the other vendors?
So for the team that did the evaluation, we really liked the fact that Workday was one system. So from anywhere on the employee record, you could access compensation information, performance information, employee data, whatever it was all in one place so that you didn't have to move out of one module of a system into another to see different information. We felt like that would really make the end user experience better, and it was just an easier way to train our employees as well. It seems like less clicks, which it has actually proven to be. And we really were excited about that piece. Another area that was a differentiator for us was the talent component. taking in all the talent processes and being able to integrate them throughout the life cycle for the employee was a big piece for us as well.
Perfect. And shifting over to your deployment partner. So you mentioned before that Deloitte assisted you in your deployment. How was that selection process run? How did you decide upon Deloitte?
Sure. So we did some homework on who had been leading a lot of the implementations for Workday, and we invited in about 5 different implementation partners to do presentations, talk to us about their methodology and their approach to Workday. And we went through a series of sessions and things targeted towards Ochsner in terms of how we would move forward with the implementation. As obviously cost was a factor as well. And we also had some experience with Deloitte on some prior projects and felt that it was a good decision for us to move in that direction. They have done many Workday implementations, and they had a good amount of experience on the payroll platform for healthcare, which is really, in some respects, at that time when we were making a decision, kind of new for healthcare to be moving into a Workday cloud-based payroll. So we were in what I call an early adopter on the healthcare payroll front to move from a traditional ERP into Workday. And Deloitte had experience there, and we felt confident that they could help us deliver. And they did.
Perfect. And building on that, can you talk a bit about the type of things that Deloitte did for you in terms of either project management or training or change management, what the scope of services they provided?
Sure. So our situation with Deloitte was actually kind of unique because, as I mentioned, this was a back office transformation project, not just solely focused on HR. So we actually had Deloitte run the project management for all of the functions that were taking place within this ERP initiative. So Workday for HCM and payroll, Cronus, Lawson. And so what we did was we wanted to have an integrated PMO so that we can make sure that all the work streams were working on the right timelines and that we were not crossing paths. So they provided that whole overarching PMO for us. They provided all the configuration and testing support for Workday, HCM, and payroll. They led our process design sessions as well. And I had a fully integrated work stream from Deloitte on change management and training. So we had 2 dedicated resources that partnered with our internal change management team on all of our communications and change activities. And then we also used Deloitte to develop all of our self-paced online training as well as our train-the-trainer sessions for the HR employees.
Excellent. I'm getting a bunch of different payroll questions, and I'm going to make one comment from a Workday perspective before we get into your answer. So just for those of you on the phone to be aware, 70% of our healthcare provider customers now run Workday payroll. Several are still in deployment, but like Ochsner, there's quite a few that are now live. But there's a lot of questions about just the biggest challenges with the payroll deployment.
Sure. So I will first say that I'm not a payroll expert, but if there's any question that I can't answer, I'll gladly put someone in touch with our payroll team that would be able to talk more through the payroll components of the project. But looking at it from a project management perspective as well as going through testing, I would tell you there are 2 things that drove a lot of our decisions and our ability to shift the way we've done things in the past. And one was the compensation structure. So our compensation structure was outdated, and simultaneously with this Workday initiative, our total rewards team developed a completely new compensation structure that we put into Workday, which obviously drove the payroll. And we also have a very complicated differential structure. And with Workday, we found the best way to manage the differentials. I will tell you it took some tweaking in terms of trying to figure out what was the right methodology to determine what employee gets what differential based on shifts. And we did do some pre-work as part of that compensation structure change to consolidate differentials where we could, so that we weren't going in with such a large shift differential table as we had in our previous system. But I would say that that was very time consuming, just the compensation structure as well as the differentials. From an actual payroll processing perspective, getting used to the changes with the tax filing, the mapping of the payroll results to the GL file in Lawson. We got a lot of support from the Deloitte team in helping us with that transition. And they're actually staying with us for 3 payrolls. So this is we're getting ready to run our 3rd payroll, and then we will be on our own. But if there's more specific questions, I'd be happy to take those questions to the payroll team and help address anyone's questions or concerns. I will tell you it's been a very positive experience. I was expecting worst case scenario just anytime you change a payroll system after 20 years. And I can tell you that I only had to send 1 check out via FedEx to someone at a remote location on the first payroll, and the 2nd payroll we had none. So very impressive results, and I really attribute a lot of it to the amount of testing we did and the parallel payrolls to ensure accuracy for our go live.
Wonderful. And you mentioned that you've run 2 payrolls and you are getting ready to run your 3rd now, correct?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Can you share what it was like transitioning from Lawson over to Workday? There's some sub-questions here about whether or not it was difficult transferring data, reporting, customized reports, how to get at that type of information.
Sure. The transfer of the data in terms of taking the data out of Lawson and mapping it into Workday we relied on Deloitte for a lot of that mapping. Our Lawson super users in IT pulled a lot of the data, and then we had a Deloitte team that helped to do the mapping into Workday. There's not anything that stands out from it being a bad experience with that throughout the project, so I can say that went smoothly. There was reiterations of it where we pulled it and it wasn't exactly what we thought it would be, and we redid it, but there wasn't anything that was a severe challenge. And then in terms of data analytics, it's kind of, what we were used to was always taking all of the data and having to go into Crystal Enterprise to write reports and then try to find a way to push them out to employees through email or, other avenues. And now we've built our reports, and they're, we have reports that are shared with leaders, reports that are shared within HR only, and people can run the reports, export them to Excel, do whatever they want to do with them right there from their desktop. So it's really cutting down on the amount of requests that are coming into HRIS for simple reports. And we also did spend some time building out a few dashboards on some compliance items, performance reviews, things like that were important to leaders, so they would have that on day 1.
Excellent. Okay, you mentioned early on that it sounds like you might have phasing of deployments. I think you mentioned phase 1 and phase 2. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Sure. So there's 2 things that we're starting on actually in August, and it's really to do with the timing of the cycles. Not necessarily that we wouldn't have been able to do it in phase 1, but it's tied to talent and as well as to our annual merit cycles. So we are going to be building out our management merit process as well as our non-management merit processes starting in August to implement for 1/1 of 2017. So this will be the first time ever we're not doing the merit process in an Excel spreadsheet. So we're really excited about that. And we're also building out the management performance review and the non-management performance reviews to go live 1/1/17 in Workday. So we'll be shifting away from paper-based forms that were scanned and put into a on-base system, and now everything will be automated with the self-evaluation in Workday and the leader-led evaluation in Workday with the final sign-offs all being in Workday and stored on the employee record. So those are the pieces that we saved for the latter part of this year.
Okay, and there are a couple of questions coming in whether or not you're leveraging or planning to leverage Workday for recruiting.
Sure. So we actually currently use Taleo for recruiting, and we are going to evaluate the Taleo and between Taleo and Workday moving into the early 2017. So it is something that we're very interested in, and our talent acquisition team is going to attend Workday Rising this year and spend some time learning more about recruitment and how others are using it.
All right. Let's see. Shifting over to the deployment, I think you might have touched upon it, but there's questions in terms of what your internal implementation team looks like,
Sure.
in terms of number of people, functions that they came from, frequency of meetings, things of that nature.
Sure. So to kind of give you an overview of how I structured the team, so I was, leading the initiative for HCM, payroll, and Kronos, and we brought in teams from the functional areas. So the HCM lead came from HRIS, the benefits lead came from benefits, and then I had 2 individuals that came out of our talent management function to focus on both some of the change initiatives as well as the talent and performance builds within Workday. And then we had 1 other HRIS specialist that joined the team around the testing phase to assist with testing scripts and running the testing scenarios. And then when we got heavy into training and the change initiatives, we brought in another person for administrative support to help with logistics for just scheduling training rooms, getting the training programs loaded into the LMS. All of those components cannot be underestimated. It is a logistical nightmare, to be quite honest, trying to coordinate that for 17,000 employees. And so we had someone dedicated to do that work for us. We also had a PMO analyst that was on the Ochsner team that worked on all of our presentations, our report outs, those types of things. We, as a team, the group that worked on the project 100% of the time, we moved locations out of the normal HR office, and we went into a location in one of our facilities where we could be a combined team with the finance and supply chain functions as well as IT. And so we've all worked here at this facility together on the project for the 12 months. And it really created great synergy in terms of the teams working together. I really do think that having the ability to walk over to another project team member in a different functional area is really important. So for us, it was a heavy focus on HCM. I did leave out payroll. My apologies. We did have payroll representatives on the team as well. We had 1 lead from payroll, and then we had other team members from payroll that would come in from time to time to work on configuration and testing. And then we also had an accounting person that focused on the payroll accounting pieces of the project as well.
Perfect. And you mentioned the integrations into your LMS system for all your employees. Can you elaborate on what your current LMS system is and how you integrate that to Workday?
Yeah, so actually we recently moved from HealthStream to Saba, and the talent management team led the integration of Saba, and we have an integration that runs between Workday and Saba to basically send over basic employee demographic data. We are looking at, integrating more of the learning into the talent portions of Workday as we begin to bring those up the latter part of this year.
Perfect. And now that you're live and transitioning to kind of a steady state, have you determined what your support model is going to look like internally?
Yes, it's still evolving because, we've been live less than 30 days. So right now we're still very much working as a project team focused on, any troubleshooting and things that we may need to do post-go live. But we will have a dedicated HRIS team to support Workday configuration and future state projects that we decide to take on within Workday. The team will be led by a director of HRIS with individuals who are focused on data management, so the transactional pieces of Workday, and then another team that's focused on HRIS configuration, system upgrades that are pushed to us throughout the year, those types of things. So, and then we also have the IT team, which reports into IT, and we have 2 individuals there who have learned and are still training on all of the integrations and there are support there for all of our own integrations to outside vendors and internal systems as well.
Have you brought in new Workday talent in terms of people who will help pull reports from the system or support Workday going forward, or have you retrained your existing staff?
We have retrained our existing staff. So we did not go out and hire Workday trained employees to join the team or become part of the future state team. We at Ochsner invested heavily in their training up front. So we did utilize Workday training. We went together as a team to the HCM fundamentals course, and then other individuals attended other trainings that were pertinent to the areas that they would focus on, such as payroll, benefits, compensation, talent. And we've also spent time in some of the online training around report writing in Studio and some of those other things.
Okay, perfect. So we have a couple of questions that go back to your selection a little bit, so we're going to kind of rewind a bit. In terms of the selection process and how you justified the project, besides just simply functionality, were there financial KPI metrics, or was there a business case that was used to justify a move to the leadership to move away from your legacy ERP to Workday?
Yes, so we did have a business case developed in terms of an ROI on the system. We did look at things around process improvements and leader time, working on non-automated processes to kind of determine where we could see pickups in terms of time spent on HR processes, as well as how we become more scalable within HR operations as well. So we did, use benchmarks, and we did look at, how we would deliver and return, on the investment made in Workday. So we did do that analysis as part of the executive decision.
Perfect. And then as part of your selection, did you leverage references with other healthcare provider organizations?
We did.
Perfect. And did you include that, was that during a specific part of the selection process where you started talking to references?
Yeah, so that was post-demos. So obviously we did the RFP, we did demonstrations, we did scripted demos, and then we went into reference checks as well.
Okay. Were there other systems besides your core Lawson system that you are able to turn off with the deployment of Workday, or are there gaps that are requiring other systems as a result of this deployment?
No, there are really no gaps in terms of having to add anything else to kind of complete what I would consider like the HRIS cycle of what we need for our employees. So our decision to implement a new LMS was really just because there was time to. It was we needed different functionality, so that was a replacement. I would tell you that it has we had an internal system that we had built to manage employee transactions through a self-service functionality. We were able to turn that off, and we've moved away from many processes and transactional type transactions that were managed through Excel spreadsheets and forms being submitted to HRIS or to payroll. So it's really about getting off of manual processes, not necessarily turning off any other systems for us, just because we didn't really have a lot of system capabilities that we were moving away from.
Perfect. All right. Recognizing that you've only been live for a month, there are a couple of questions about reports that you get out of Workday, and what type of reports you're getting from Workday, whether or not you find them usable, the type of things that the leadership is using within Workday, things of that nature.
Sure. So there are delivered reports within Workday, but we did spend time with a Deloitte partner working on reports. So we took a lot of the reports that we use today to determine if there was something we were going to have to build in Workday or that it would come delivered. And I would tell you the amount of things that we had to customize or build were minimal compared to what we were doing in our prior system. I think the big focus for us was really around turnover reporting and how we group our organization for turnover reporting, and getting that right was a big piece of our reporting strategy. And that's something that our executive team looks at regularly, and it's part of our monthly operating rhythm. So the turnover was a big component of our reporting strategy for HR, and there was also a lot of audit reports that were built for the operation teams. So, because there's really a shift from doing data entry and transactional things to more of auditing the data to make sure things are correct. So I find that the team has really focused on building more reports for them to audit things through transactions versus being the person who's actually putting the information into the system. So I did see a shift towards that during our implementation as well. And then on the dashboards, we did get some help on the dashboards, and we really have not gone full force into the dashboards. I know there's just so much more we can do with it, and like I said, we've only been live less than 30 days, but as we get further into this and become better at doing it ourselves, I really see us utilizing the dashboards going forward for a lot of the key metrics that our leaders need to use and really don't have good visibility to today, from coming from our prior system.
Perfect. And as part of this project, was there any sort of HR transformation or shifts in how the HR and payroll functions supported the organization?
So we have not done any real change to the HR structure as part of this project. So, how the teams operate and how they work is going to be very different, obviously is very different than how they were managing before. But we have not done any of the, HCM transformation, service delivery type initiatives as part of this project.
Perfect. We just have a couple more questions, and then I think we could wrap up. In terms of your next steps with Workday, do you have any future plans, thoughts around additional extensions, things of that nature?
Sure. So besides the things we have slated to start working on this year around the advanced compensation and the talent processes, we are interested in looking at recruiting. I think our finance team has interest in understanding more about the Workday platform for finance in future years. Obviously, they're going through their own transformation right now, so I don't think it's something they would embark upon in the near future, but I think long-term it may be something of consideration. And then from an HCM perspective, I know there's also there's a learning component that's being developed within Workday that we'll have interest in once that's kind of out there and kind of past maybe the early adopter phase. I think we'll have interest in that. And I know that there's a scorecarding functionality, which I have not even begun to touch on, but I do think would be a benefit to our organization as well.
All right. We will just wait a moment if there are any additional questions that come in. All right, I think maybe we'll conclude it with what final thoughts do you have for those on the line that are either evaluating Workday or planning their implementation or just kind of starting the process? Do you have any final words of wisdom for the group on the phone?
Sure. So I think making sure you have your requirements if you're in the phase of starting to look at vendors. A lot of times it's easy to go into just invite some vendors in to do demos and kind of see what the system has to offer. But having your requirements documented and some examples of things that you would like for them to demonstrate is really important so that you can get a real feel for what the system can do. I would tell you that having an implementation partner that has a broader lens than just technology is very helpful in terms of implementing something like this, in terms of making good decisions about how to set up your processes and your approval flows and those types of things in best practice around those. So I think that's important as well. Change management and training, as I've mentioned a few times throughout the presentation, just cannot be underestimated. when you're talking about, changing everything that an employee touches for themselves and their employees as well as their payroll. And I feel strongly that having the dedicated project team was instrumental in our success as well, and being able to invest in their training, being able to partner with Deloitte, and being able to focus on the Workday implementation without being sidetracked with other initiatives going on within HR.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. We're thrilled that Ochsner is a customer of Workday's and that you were able to go live on HR and payroll in under a year at the size of the organization that you are. So we're very happy to have you as part of the community.
Thank you, Adam, and we're very excited.
Excellent. So with that, we'll hand it back to the moderator to close things out.
Excellent. Thank you for attending this Fierce Live webinar and submitting so many great questions. I'd like to thank our speakers for participating and Workday for presenting today's webinar. This webinar has been recorded, and you will be able to access the recording within 24 hours on the same page you used to register for this event. Thank you again for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.